Hi, I'm Luke and welcome back to the channel. So you joined me for episode 2 of building Scalexbric out of Lego. Now I've affectionately dubbed it Scalexbric since the time of editing the first episode, so bear with me when you look at the thumbnail for the last video. I should probably explain, I forgot to cover in the last video, a couple of rules for this challenge. So the first rule is that I've got to complete this build using only official. I can't cheat, I can't use anything 3D printed, not that I would know how, and I can't use anything out of the shed I can only use official Lego elements. So maybe that's a bit harsh, but it's going to push me to become a better builder. And most importantly, no super glue. So in episode 1, we established a footprint for Scalex. Do I think that that's going to be wide enough now for 2 of these assemblies there? I think on a straight it could be. It's going to happen at the corners. And the reason I say that is because if this is going to be the sled corner, as you saw last time, it's just going to go. So how do I stop that from happening? Well, what we need to do is tinker, because I think it needs some kind of outrigger, the thing that cranes have to stop them toppling over. Maybe we can mount a wheel on the side, here-ish I think, so that when it comes into the corner it can sort of lean against it, and hopefully that'll get it around the corner. So maybe that's a better thing to test now before I invest too much time doing this. That might be a good idea. So let's hide for the time being and let's test if that outrigger idea works, because I think that is going to be pivotal to whether this is going to work at all. So let's find some wheels. So I've got no shortage of wheels, and I'm going to try and talk whilst I do this, which is not usual for me whilst I'm building. I'm very much a set builder and I follow the instructions as one does, but I don't tend to talk while I'm doing it. So breaking that habit for YouTube is going to be a bit of a learning curve, but bear with me. I'm hopeful that I'll get there. Now, I want a wheel that's quite narrow and quite tall, ideally, because then I can keep it close to the chassis. Although whether that stops it from tippling over or not remains to be seen. Outriggers actually, when I think about it, tend to be quite wide out from the crane, so maybe there's something that needs to be mirrored there. So let's see what candidates we've got for wheels. I mean, I could even mount them sort of underneath. Whether that would affect it riding along the track, let's find out. So if I can find another pair like that, hopefully you're seeing this with the framing. Yep. Let's see what we've got that looks a bit like that. Now I should state that the majority of the Lego that I've got actually comes from bulk lots. In a previous iteration of the hobby, all the work was done on Instagram, and it was restoring the vintage sets that I remember from my childhood. And it was great fun. Now, a lot of you are probably screaming at me through the screen with my lack of organisation for these wheels, but I don't know what else you would do with them. So if you've got some suggestions, feel free to let me know in the comment section. I will read them all and respond to them all whilst a tiny channel. So I can't find a duplicate for this one. However, have a look at the mount on it. Would these fit on there? No, too broad. So what we're going to do is we're going to roll with these wheels that you would get in Lego system sets from the 90s and 2000s, and I'll see if I can mount this. So I'll just have to try and think of a way to bridge these. Let's have a look at the mounting options underneath. So there are some, so let's try this out and see how we get along. So again, this can be all colours. It doesn't need to be pretty, it just needs to be functional. Bring the track back in and see, does that wheel clear the track and does it make contact? That's riding a bit too high. Maybe take that off, swap that for 2 plates, and I can predict that they're going to snap away. So let's see if we can just secure those a little bit better. Will that go on? It will. So now we're back on the track. So I'm not immediately worried that the wheels aren't touching, because what I want it to do is when there's a lean, the wheel engages. So hopefully now we've got a prototype. So let's take this back across to the track and see what happens. We are back on the track, same starting point as usual. Probably going to set off in reverse as per usual, but let's see how we get on now that we've got these jerry-rigged outriggers. That's actually promising. I'll step it up a little bit. The back end's come away. Alright, so what I've done is I've moved the outriggers back 2 studs to see if the outriggers can double up as a guide to keep that part of the sled on the tracks, and race official Bella's joined us, so let's put her to good use and see if she'll officiate and give some good feedback. No, so moving it further back's made the problem worse, so back to the bench. So this outrigger idea was ambitious but rubbish, as Top Gear used to put it. Now, it could be due to that they're not wide enough out, but I think when the train is navigating a turn, I think the wheel is coming inbound, clobbering the rail, and that's when the problems are happening. Now, going wider with the wheels would fix that, but I won't be able to test if the track actually works. Unless I completely flatten it, then we can't test for gradient anymore, but it's worth a shot. So I'll widen this. So we're only going to go 2 studs wider. And I'll mount it back in the middle again so that we can repeat the tests. So now that is wider than the rails, so hopefully it's still going to bear fruit, but we'll go back across to the track and see how we get on. Right, here we go. Test number 612. This is with the 6 wide outriggers. Straight away it's still problematic. What I'm going to do is I'm going to lay the track flat and see how we get on then, although I'm not going to be able to emulate the full course. So let's do that. Right, so I'm back to having a flat track now, so I'm not going to be able to test this part, but hopefully with this just being a straight part, it should be a foregone conclusion. If I can get from here, well, if I can test from here, I won't have to stop until I get to here. So if I can really hammer around this section, then we might be on to a winner. So let's find out. That was promising. Let's take it back to the start. Let's try this again. I really want to try and belt it around the track. Actually, you know what? I'm getting quite happy with that. I know it'll be a different equation when there's a car mounted to the top of it and when you've got to factor in gradients, but I can't fix all the problems in one go. And where'd the excitement be if I managed to get it all right in one go? So let's see if I can max it out this time and see what happens. I think we've got a winner there. So now we know that the width of the sled is 10 studs. If we take into account the wheels, that they're broadly 2 studs, and the width of the train chassis is 6, so we've got 10, and the width of Lego track is 8. So we've got an overhang of a stud either side. Now that's fine because the Speed Champions are 8 studs wide as well. So I'm not worried about any overhang there. I think we do need, let's say, 4 studs between each of them to try and keep the racing looking semi-realistic. I know this is Lego and so on, but you still want it to look half decent, don't you? And I'm hopeful that that's going to be actually attainable with a partition in the middle and so on and so forth that I envision that it'll need at this point. So how wide is this in total now, given that I'll also need some runoff on either side? So let's allow 4 studs for that at the moment, and I'll just try and find another 1x4. Wherefore art thou? 2x4, but it'll do. So 2 widths of track, so that's 8, 16, 20, 24, 28 studs wide. Now, one of the things that I did wonder about was if this would be able to fit on 32x32 stud base plates, and know that it's blue, but it will. So that's really encouraging, because I thought I was going to have to buy a load of 48x48 base plates, and I might yet do for the corners, but that's a fantastic start. So what I need to do now is mount this onto the base plate, and then let's try and get a support structure built up that will come up the sides, and it's going to help conceal the sled that's doing all the heavy lifting underneath, and then we'll know how high the actual surface of the road is and how we're going to allow the cars to be propelled along. So let's get on with it. So I've never actually mounted train track to anything, so I can see that the connection points are either ends of the sleeper. So let's get some 1x2 plates, or just 1 wide plates, and let's get this tacked down. All right, now we are cooking. So now we've got 2 lanes of track connected onto a base plate, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it's more than I've done before, and this is giving me a lot of confidence that I can do this. So let's keep going. So lovers of symmetry look away, but what I'm doing here is I'm building up the middle partition because I still want the track surface to look like Scalexbric, so it's going to have the 2 slots for the cars to appear as though they're following. Now, my idea on how I'm going to actually do that is, if I have a central set of columns, I can have a thin platform above them, which will create that center section of the track, and then I can suspend the sides of the track from either sides of the base plate. So that's what I'm doing now. So I'm going to try and get that to the right height. So if I bring back in the sled scale, how many studs tall is that? How many bricks tall is that? So we've gone 12 bricks tall there, and we are perilously close to the height of the cable. So I think we need to go another 2 bricks tall just for clearance. So that looks a lot better. So I'll just angle that up for the camera. 14 bricks of height. All right, so now we've made up enough height. let's try and create that central platform. So I'm going to use a Technic frame to hold these together. If you can hear zooming in the background, that is because my cat has developed the zoomies. So what I'm doing now is I'm attempting to widen the track out to the width that I think it needs to be to have a slot car slot fairly central above the train tracks. So there's going to be a bit of trial and error here. Okay, so you start to get the impression of what I'm going for. So try and click this in to secure it. So that is secured, but we've lost one of the Technic beams. So it's still quite fragile at this point, but that's fine. I've got plenty of time to work on making it sturdy. I just want to try and figure out what the dimensions need to be in the clearance. So if we try and look down it centrally, so that now comes out and covers the first 2 studs of width of the sled. So that's leaving 4 covered. So how would that look with the car being 8 studs wide riding along it? I think that might be feasible. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to clad these 2 lower edges with grey to give them that slot car appearance. And I'm quite happy to keep this black and studded because I like it to have the look of Lego about it. So now you get what I'm going for. I'll do the same on the other side once I've ordered more parts, but this is already helping to figure out what the bill of materials is going to look like for the rest of the mock. So what I'm going to do now is repeat this process on this side, but only to support that edge of the track. So let's get to that. Now don't panic that a lot of these bricks are yellowed. I've kept them like this because I can do a retro bright on them at any time really. That's not difficult to do, you just need a sunny day in England. That's the rare part. But you can do that at any time. What I'm going to use them for is just filler that won't be seen on the day anyway. So there's no harm in those being yellowed. Alright, so we're now up to height for that. So I think what I'm going to do now at this point, I'm going to bring these 2 studs inboard because realistically, looking at some yellowed pillars is quite ugly. So we'll come in and we'll try and be symmetrical with the spacing on the other side, not necessarily the width of the columns, but I'll respect that we've got a stud between the columns and the track and break it. And now we're ready to clad it with a roof. Alright, so we've got 1 slot car lane totally mapped out now, so let's see how it looks proportion wise. So the car is supported by 2 studs on either side, so I'm not worried about it falling through the gap. I think there's enough space for the slot mechanism that I'll figure out soon, to be able to make it round corners, I think. But this is awesome to be able to see this coming to life now. It's been in my head for ages, so this is really exciting for me. It's probably not very exciting for you, but this is brilliant. So there it is. I've done the tarmac for both lanes now, so again, ignore the colour matching because that's non-existent right now, but it's just to get an idea of if this can actually work, and I'm delighted with that. So let's get both cars on there. It's slot cars. The slot is quite wide, but I think it has to be. But I think when the whole thing is built, I don't think that'll draw the eye too much. You'll be able to see the sled going along underneath, but I think that's just the way that it needs to be. Now, corners are going to bring a whole load of challenges that I've not even thought of yet, but I'm so delighted now that I can actually see my vision is coming together. So I'm going to have to work out what the bill of materials is, order millions of these parts, but I'm so thrilled with this now. So I'm going to wrap it up there. I might add a start line for a thumbnail, but otherwise I'm so happy with this. So I'm going to sign off there. Thanks for joining, and I'll see you on the next one.